Hello everyone, welcome to Testpert MBA Prep. I hope you all are safe and you all are doing very well. And many aspirants asked us to make the concept videos on static GK. So what I decided is to start with Indian polity because I strongly believe that this is the best way to learn static GK. So instead of solving MCQs directly before learning the concept, first learn the concept and then you will be in a position to solve the questions that are related to that concept. So instead of solving some random questions, this is the best way to learn static part. And I will start with polity from the very beginning and I will try to simplify each and every concept so that you can easily understand and remember, and by the end of the session you will understand the framing of the constitution and how the constitution was framed, and you will also learn some techniques to remember the schedules, the parts of the Indian constitution, and at the end we will also have a practice session. So don't skip this video. First, what is constitution? What is the meaning of constitution? See, if we go by the definition of constitution, what does it say? Constitution simply is a written and a dynamic document, right? It's a written and dynamic document which contains rules to regulate the government and is the highest law of the country. Okay, let us decode it. What is meant by written? Written simply means our constitution is not oral. All right. And what is dynamic? Dynamic means that constitution can be changed through amendments, right? It can be changed through amendments. So it's a written and dynamic document containing rules to regulate the government and is the highest law of the country. So what is meant by highest law? Highest law simply means no law or no other rule in our country can go against the constitution, can surpass the constitution, right? So our constitution is the apex law, supreme law. So before getting into making of the constitution, right, we shall discuss about the types of constitution. All right, we shall discuss about the types of constitution. Now, what are the types of constitution? How many types? There are basically two types of constitution. The first one is written constitution and the second one is unwritten constitution. All right, the first one is written and the second one is unwritten. So what is meant by written constitution? See, written, the political definition of written, the political meaning of written is if all the provisions are systematically, right, if all the provisions are properly arranged, then it is known as a written constitution, right? So that is the political meaning of written. Now, if I give you an example of written, let's say Indian constitution, right? Indian constitution is an example of written constitution because in Indian constitution we can find each and every provision is arranged in a proper way, in a systematic way. For instance, we have various parts like part 1, part 2, part 3 and so on, and under each part we have various provisions, and under each provision we have various articles related to that. So it is arranged in a proper way. However, in an unwritten constitution, and let me explain you here, like clear this, unwritten doesn't mean oral. See, unwritten doesn't mean oral, but what it means politically is unwritten means all the provisions are not properly arranged. All those provisions are not properly arranged, they simply are messy. So to study an unwritten constitution, it will be very hard because if we have to search each and everything here and there. Why? Because it is not properly arranged. So it takes a lot of time to study an unwritten constitution. And if I give you some examples of unwritten constitution, so the constitution of the UK, right? The constitution of the United Kingdom and the constitution of the Israel, right? And the constitution of the New Zealand, right? So these three countries have unwritten constitution. So unwritten constitution is also known as uncodified constitution, right? It's also known as uncodified constitution. I will just give you a simple example so that you will understand the difference in a much better way. See, generally we have a rough copy, right? So we have a rough copy where we write various subjects in that single book, in the single notebook, right? So we generally don't follow any order in writing the subjects in that book. So it will be very difficult and time consuming to search which topic was written on what page and so on. On the other hand, we will also have a fair copy in which we will write each subject in a particular book, right? Each subject in a particular book, so that it will be very convenient for us to search which subject is written in which book and which topic is framed in which book, right? If everything is framed in one book, it will be very difficult for us to search. So this is an example of unwritten constitution. Whereas if each subject is written in a different book, it will be very easy to refer. So this is an example for written constitution. I hope you understood the difference between a written and unwritten constitution. Unwritten doesn't mean oral, right? Unwritten doesn't mean oral. It simply means the constitution of those countries which is not properly arranged, right, in a systematic manner. Now, if we look into the making of constitution, making of Indian constitution, I will just brief you about all the timelines, what happened in which year. So in 1934, what happened was the proposal of Constituent Assembly, right? The proposal of Constituent Assembly was given by M.N. Roy. So what is my Constituent Assembly? Constituent Assembly is a body that simply frames the constitution. So it frames the constitution. Okay, it frames the constitution. And this proposal was given by M.N. Roy. Who is M.N. Roy? M.N. Roy is Manabendranath Roy, though the full name is not important, just for your understanding. And what you have to remember is he is one of the founders of CPI, which is the Communist Party of India, right? He is not the only founder. He is one of the founders. Though there were a lot of founders. There were around 20 founders who founded CPI. CPI was found in the year 1925, and M.N. Roy is known as the father of Indian communism. Okay, father of Indian communism. So in 1934, he simply proposed the importance of Constituent Assembly, right? How important is the Constituent Assembly to frame the Indian Constitution? Now in 1935, what happened was Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru officially demanded, right? So he officially demanded the Constituent Assembly to frame the Indian Constitution in the Indian National Congress. Okay. So INC officially demanded Constituent Assembly to frame the Indian Constitution. Now in 1940, what happened? The August offer was given by Lord Linlithgow. So Lord Linlithgow, he proposed the August offer. So in August offer, what happened was Lord Linlithgow simply said that Indians should help the British in the Second World War. And after the Second World War, we will frame a Constituent Assembly in which majority of the Constituent Assembly will be Indians, so that you can frame your own constitution. See, if you observe this offer, which was proposed by the British, this was just to attract Indians, so that we Indians help them in the Second World War, right? And what the British said was, we will permit you to make your own constitution and we won't give you complete independence, right? Instead of giving you complete independence, we will provide you dominion status, right? So what is my dominion status? Dominion status simply means to rule under the British government, right? To rule under the British government. All right. So you can rule your own country, but the head of your country will be the British government. Okay. This means instead of singing Janagan Man, we would have sung simply Long Live the Queen, which is the national anthem of Britain, right? So I hope you understood the meaning of dominion status. So dominion status simply means the head of India will be British monarch, and the lower level administration will be taken care by our Indians. So which means India is ruled by Indians but under the British crown. Now, when Congress came to know about this offer, when Congress came to know about this August offer, they simply rejected it. They simply rejected it. And what Congress simply said was, okay, we will make our own constitution. That is good. And also we will rule our own country. So you guys don't interfere in that. Now, in 1948, what happened was cabinet mission arrived, which recommended the formation of Constituent Assembly. Now, why cabinet mission arrived from Britain was when Congress simply said we will frame our own constitution as well as we will rule our own country. The issue got aggravated. And in 1942 the Quit India movement also started. And now, due to the whole pressure, due to the whole agitations, the British realized that their days in India was over, right? Their days in India were over, and they have to leave India by making it free. So they simply realized this, and in 1946, cabinet mission arrived India, which recommended the formation of Constituent Assembly. Because now the British were already involved in the Second World War at this time. They were in Second World War, so they didn't have enough time, enough resources to suppress these mass revolts and also to rule India. At that time, they didn't know when would the Second World War will end, right? They didn't have any time to rule India. So now they thought that they have to take a royal farewell. So they want to take a royal farewell. Okay, they want to take a royal farewell. Why? Because if Indians were already against the British and started various agitations and movements. See, why? Because Indians were already against the British at that time, and they started various agitations and movements. And if Indians cross out of the country, then in history it will be written as the British were thrown outside by Indians, right? So in the history it will be written as the British were thrown out by the Indians. So in order to avoid this, the British thought to take a royal farewell, which means they wanted everyone to believe that the British are not in a mood to rule India. Okay. So the British, what they thought, the British wanted to make everyone believe that they were not in a position, they were not in a mood to rule India, so that they are simply granting freedom to Indians. Therefore, what they did was in 1946. So in 1946, this is the reason why they formed a cabinet mission. So the cabinet mission arrived, and this cabinet mission recommended the formation of a Constituent Assembly. And the main aim of this cabinet mission was to supervise the constitution, right? So that they can leave it for the Indians. Okay. So in 1946, the cabinet mission arrived, and it recommended the formation of the Constituent Assembly. And this Constituent Assembly will frame the Constitution of India. As we already discussed here, this Constitution Assembly was officially it was proposed by M.N. Roy. For the first time it was proposed by M.N. Roy, but it came into existence after the arrival of cabinet mission in India in 1946. And when this cabinet mission arrived in India, it recommended the formation of Constituent Assembly, and then the Constituent Assembly was formed. All right, but the first idea was given by M.N. Roy. So in 1934, for the first time, M.N. Roy proposed the idea of the Constituent Assembly, and in 1935, Nehru officially demanded the Constituent Assembly in the INC, Indian National Congress. And in 1940, what happened? In the August of war, the British accepted the idea of Constituent Assembly, but they wanted to give only the dominion status to Indians, right? However, Congress immediately rejected the idea. So finally in 1946 the cabinet mission arrived. So it recommended the Constituent Assembly, and the British promised Indians to give complete independence after framing the constitution. So I hope you all understood the different timelines and the interconnection between each timeline, right? Now if we talk about the members of the cabinet mission, right? The members of the cabinet mission, there were total 3 members, right? There were total 3 members. The first one is Patrick Lawrence, who was the chairman, right? He was the chairman of the cabinet mission. And A.V. Alexander and Stafford Cripps, these two were the members. So it consisted of 3 members. The first one is chairman, and the other 2 were the members. And you can simply remember these 3 members by using a shortcut, which is LAC, line of control. LAC in general means line of control, which is the boundary line between India and China. But LAC in this context means L stands for Lawrence, A stands for Alexander, and C stands for Cripps. Okay. So now when the cabinet mission simply arrived, so when they came to India, they analyzed the situation, and also they wanted to conduct an indirect election to elect the members of the Constituent Assembly. So in order to frame a Constituent Assembly, in order to set up a Constituent Assembly, they wanted to conduct an indirect election so that Constituent Assembly will frame the Constitution for India. So after a few days, during July, right, of 1946, right, an indirect election for the Constituent Assembly was held. Cabinet mission arrived on 24th March 1946, and the elections were held. They were held in July of 1946, after a few months of arrival of the cabinet mission. All right. Now we shall discuss about the members of the Constituent Assembly, right? After the election, who were the members? Now there were 389 members, right? There were 389 members. Some were elected, some were nominated. We shall discuss who were elected and who were nominated. Now out of these 389 members, right, 292 members were directly from British India, right? British India simply means all the states that were directly under British control. All right. So out of 389, 292 members were directly from the states of British India. They were directly elected from the states of British India, and 4 were the commissioners, right? 4 members were the commissioners from B, C and D. A for Ajmer, which is in present Rajasthan, right? And B for Baluchistan, which is in present Pakistan. And C for Coorg. Coorg is in Karnataka, right? Karnataka. And D for Delhi. See, the difference between British India and these 4 provisions was similar to that of today's states and union territories. In the same way, at the time there was also difference between the state that comes to British India and all these special provisions. So these were like union territories at that time. However, these were also under British India. So out of 389, 292 were elected from British India, 4 were the commissioners, and 93 were nominated from the princely states. All right, these 93 members were from the princely states. They were directly nominated. See, princely states means they simply means those provisions, right? Those provinces which have monarchical form of administration, right? For instance, we have Nawab, or we have king. So they have a monarchical form of administration. So all those areas were known as princely states, and these 93 members were directly not elected, they were directly nominated for the Constituent Assembly. Now, if you read some standard books of Indian history, you will come to know that the total number of members of Indian Constitution, right? Total number of members of Indian Constitution are 296 and not 389 before independence. Before independence, the total members were 296 and not 389. This 296 means 292 plus these 4, 292 plus 4. But what happened to these 93 members which were directly nominated by princely states? See, when the cabinet mission simply offered these princely states that you will be framing a constitution for India, so you will be a part of it. So the princely states simply rejected this offer, and they simply said, we have our own form of government, which is monarchy, so we have nothing to do with the Constituent Assembly, therefore we will not participate. Okay, therefore we will not participate. So these princely states did not send any of the representatives to the Constituent Assembly. So these 93, even though they were nominated, these princely states did not send any of the representatives, any of these 93 to become a part of the Constituent Assembly. So before independence, there were only 296 members in our Constituent Assembly, though 389 were elected and nominated. So this is the condition. This is the condition before the independence. Now what happened after independence? Now after India became independent and Pakistan was separated, right? When Pakistan was separated from India and India became independent, out of these 389, right? Out of these 389, 90 members went to Pakistan Constituent Assembly. 90 members out of this 389, 90 members went to Pakistan Constituent Assembly. All right. Therefore, the number of members of the Indian Constituent Assembly after independence was 299. All right. So before independence, India had 296 members in the Indian Constitution, in the Constituent Assembly, and after Constitution, India had 299 members, whereas Pakistan had 90 members. All right. So in examination, you may be asked, how many members were there in Constituent Assembly before independence, in which 296 is the answer, and how many members are there in Constituent Assembly of India after independence, in which 299 members is the answer. All right. Now let us look at the Constituent Assembly, right? So on 9th December 1946, the first meeting of Constituent Assembly was held. All right. So the first meeting of Constituent Assembly was held because the elections for the Constituent Assembly took place in June-July of 1946, and after a few months, that is on 9th December of 1946, the first meeting was held. And where was it held? Where was this first meeting was held? It was held in New Delhi. Okay, it was held in New Delhi because New Delhi was the capital of India at that time also, right? And the first chairman of Constituent Assembly for the first meeting of Constituent Assembly was Dr. Sachidanand Sinha. Okay, he was the first chairman of the first meeting of Constituent Assembly. Why? Because he was elected as the chairman of first meeting because he was the oldest sitting member at that time, right? Though he was a temporary chairman, so he was a temporary, which also means interim chairman. He was given this position because he was the oldest member. When Sachidanand Sinha joined the Constituent Assembly, his age was around 75. So he was 75 years old. So because of this, he was made the chairman of the first meeting of the Constituent Assembly, and it is also a French tradition that the oldest member must become chairman. Right? It was the French tradition that the oldest member of the assembly must become the chairman. So in that way, he became the first chairman of the first meeting of Constituent Assembly. Now, after this, the second meeting was held after 2 days, that is on 11th December 1946. Now, Dr. Rajendra Prasad became the regular chairman, right? H.C. Mukherjee became the deputy chairman, right? And B.N. Rao became the constitutional advisor. Okay. See, in some books you may also come across the deputy chairman as the vice chairman. Don't get confused, both are same. So vice chairman and deputy chairman both are same. Now, on 13th December, what happened? On 13th December of 1946, the objective resolution was presented by Nehru. Right? Objective resolution was presented by Nehru, and objective resolution simply means the summary of the upcoming Constitution of India. Right? It's just a summary of the upcoming Constitution of India, and the preamble of the Constitution. Right? The preamble of the Constitution was actually inspired from this objective resolution. And if we look at the time period, right, the Constituent Assembly took 2 years, 11 months and 18 days to draft the entire Constitution of India. So this is one more fact that you have to remember. And before finalizing the Constitution, right, before finalizing the Constitution, it took 200 amendments. 200 amendments were made before the finalizing of the Constitution. And in terms of number of sessions, the Constituent Assembly took almost 11 sessions to draft the Indian Constitution. So the time period was 2 years, 11 months and 18 days. But in terms of sessions, in terms of number of sessions, they took 11 sessions to frame the entire Constitution. And before finalization of the Constitution, 2000 amendments were made. So these all are some important facts that you have to remember as far as your examination is concerned. And if we just look at our Constitution at a glance, before drafting the Constitution of India, right, the Constitution of almost 60 countries was studied. Okay. And the total expenditure was almost 64 lakh rupees at that time. Right. It was very expensive, because 64 lakhs at that time was not a small amount. And when Constitution was completed, right, when Constitution was completed, it had to be calligraphed, because see, calligraphy simply means it must be written in a beautiful way, right? It must be written in a beautiful way. Now, the calligraphy in English was done by Prem Bihari Raizada. Okay, the calligraphy in English was done by Prem Bihari Raizada, and calligraphy in Hindi language was done by Vasant Krishna Vaid. Okay, Vasant Krishna Vaid. However, the Constitution, originally it was written in English, right? Originally it was written in English, but to frame this Constitution, right, the framing of Constitution was not done by a single person, right? So when all the members framed the Constitution, and it was given to Prem Bihari Raizada to just calligraph that, to write it in a neat, in a proper way in English language, and Vasant Krishna Vaid, right, he just written that in Hindi. He didn't translate that in Hindi language. It was translated by someone, but he just wrote that in Hindi language in a proper way. Now, the borders of the pages, right? The borders of the pages were designed by Nandlal Bose. Okay. See, at that time, Prem Bihari Raizada and Vasant Krishna, these two were the best calligraphers of the country. So because of that reason, they were given the opportunity, and the borders of the pages of Indian Constitution were designed by Nandlal Bose. So in the picture you can also see that he is Nandlal Bose. He is demonstrating his designs on the constitution, right, to Mahatma Gandhi, right. So these were the designs which we can see on the borders of the pages. And one thing you have to note it here, everything was a handmade effort, right. Whether it's calligraphy in Hindi or calligraphy in English or the border of the pages, everything was a handmade effort, right. So we didn't use any printer or any MS Office at that time at that time in India. So everything was a handmade effort. So it took a lot of effort to frame the entire constitution and to design thereafter. All right. So let's look into some of the other facts that you have to remember. The Indian Constitution is the longest written constitution of the world. Indian Constitution is the longest written constitution of the world. And now I want to ask you a question. Which constitution, which country's constitution is the shortest constitution of the world? Right? Which country's constitution is the shortest constitution of the world? Just comment the answer in the comment box. Okay, which country's constitution was the shortest constitution of the world? No, don't wait for this session to get completed. Just if you know the answer, comment immediately, or you can now just Google and you can comment. After that you can resume the session. Okay, all right. So the second one is the day of enactment. Now the writing of constitution was completed on 26 November 1949. The writing, entire thing was completed on 26th November 1949. So this is celebrated as the Constitution Day and the National Law Day. All right. So 26 November 1949, 26 November is celebrated as the Constitution Day and the National Law Day from 1949. All right. And on 26 January 1950, the Constitution was implemented throughout India. So this is known as the Day of Enforcement. So throughout India, Constitution was implemented on 26 January 1950. So from this day, the Constitution was followed throughout India. When the Constitution was implemented, at that time there was one preamble, 22 parts, 8 schedules, okay, 8 schedules and 395 articles. Okay, it originally had one preamble, 22 parts, 8 schedules and 395 articles, and our national flag was adopted by the Constituent Assembly on 22nd July 1947. So Constituent Assembly adopted national flag on 22nd July 1947, and our national flag was designed by Pingali Venkaya. Okay, it was designed by Pingali Venkaya. Now here you may I will clear this. Okay, here you may get a doubt, right? You may get a doubt. Our constitution was finished, it was completely finished on 26 November, but why it took 3 months to get that implemented throughout India, right? Why it took 3 months to get the constitution implemented throughout India? See, it was due to the Purna Swaraj resolution in 1929, right? The Purna Swaraj resolution in 1929 by Jawaharlal Nehru. See, in 1929, on 19th December 1929, what happened was Indian National Congress passed the Purna Swaraj resolution. Okay, it passed the Purna Swaraj resolution. In which session? Can you name the session in which the Purna Swaraj was passed? The INC session. So it was passed in Lahore session. Okay, it was passed in Lahore. 6 Jan 1930, right? It passed in 19th December on 19th December 1929. So from 26 Jan 1930, Indians started celebrating Purna Swaraj, which was a symbolic Independence Day. Okay, it was a symbolic Independence Day by believing that a day will come when India will become independent. And due to this, it was also decided that the constitution should also be implemented from 26 Jan instead of implementing immediately after framing the constitution, just to remember the day. So we started celebrating a symbolic independence from 26 Jan 1930, right? From 26 January 1930, but we got independence on 15th August 1947. But at the time of independence, our constitution was not yet framed. So it was decided that okay, so we used to celebrate 26th January as the symbolic Independence Day, but now we have 15th August to celebrate it as Independence Day. So let us make 26th January as Republic Day, and after the completion of the constitution, um, after the completion of the constitution, let us make 26th January as Republic Day. And now the constitution was completed on 26th November 1949. So 26th November became our constitution day, and 26th January became the Republic Day, that is from 1950. Alright, it was all due to the Purna Swaraj resolution. Alright, now if we look at the drafting committee, right, if we look at the drafting committee, see, drafting simply means framing or writing the constitution. Drafting simply means framing the constitution. So this drafting committee was formed on 29th August of 1947, that is immediately after the independence. Alright, 29th August 1947, and the drafting committee had 7 members. So you can see in the picture, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. 7 members. We had 7 members, in which Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was the chairman. Alright. So Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was the chairman, and he is also known as the father of Indian Constitution, and this you must know, right? You might already know this. So he is the father of the Indian Constitution, and all the other 6 members were Syed Muhammad Sadullah, right? Dr. K.M. Munshi, N. Gopalaswamy Iyengar, and Alladi Krishnaswamy Iyer, N. Madhav Rao, and this N. Madhav Rao, he replaced B.L. Mitter. B.L. Mitter. Sorry with my handwriting. I hope you understand a bit of it. So he replaced N. Madhav Rao replaced B.L. Mitter because B.L. Mitter resigned due to bad health. So when he resigned, N. Madhav Rao replaced, and T.T. Krishnamachari. So he replaced D.P. Kaitan. Okay, so he replaced D.P. Kaitan in 1948 because D.P. Kaitan passed away in 1948, and he replaced immediately. So this is all about the drafting committee. It constituted of 7 members, in which 6 were the members and 1 was the chairman, who was Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Now if we look at the current situation of Indian Constitution, right? Indian Constitution, at first, how many parts were there? At first there were 22 parts, 8 schedules and 395 articles. But now there are 25 parts and 12 schedules, right? 12 schedules and 470 articles. Okay. See, 470, this is after 104th amendment, right, in the year 2020. Okay, this is after 104th amendment, so latest amendment in 2020. So if you want me to explain you the difference between parts, schedules and the articles, I will just give you a Venn diagram. So if let me write it here. Okay. Okay. So if I name the innermost part as the articles, and this middle one as the schedule, and the outermost one is the parts. Okay. So this is the difference. Under each part there are schedules. Under each schedule there are various articles that are related to that particular schedule. All right. Now we shall discuss the parts of Indian Constitution. So these are the 25 parts of Indian Constitution. So part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 4. Yeah. See guys, sometimes we come across like this: part 4, part 4a, okay, part 9, part 9a, part 9b. If I just tell you the difference between part 4 and part 4a, this capital A, right, this capital A, this capital means independent, right, it is independent. Okay. And sometimes you will come across with small a, right, this is known as clause, right, this is known as clause. And this capital A means independent, and it has nothing to do with part 4. Okay, this part 4 and this part 4a, these two are independent of each other. All right. And why it was made like this was, this is just to avoid the this is just to not to make constitution so lengthy. So if we keep on adding part 25, 26, 27, so on, if we keep on numbering them, then the constitution will be too much lengthy, too much bulky. So in order to avoid this, it was simply getting inserted in under various parts. But these two are different. Part 4 is different and part 4a is different. Those two have nothing in common. All right. In the same way, part 9 is different, part 9a is independent, part 9b is also independent. All right. So part 1, it deals with the union and its territories, right, union and its territories. Part 2 deals with citizenship. Don't worry, I will explain you all this at once. Okay, I will explain you each and everything. After that, I will tell you how to remember each and every part in just 1 minute. Okay, how to remember, how to recall each and every part in 1 minute. So part 3 deals it is dealt with the fundamental rights. Okay, and part 4 deals with the DPSP, the directive principles of the state policy. Part 4a, this deals with the fundamental duties. Part 5, it talks about the union. Part 6 talks about the states. And part 7, see, now what happened with part 7 is, part 7 used to deal with the princely states. See, the states in the B part of the first schedule. See, B part of the first schedule dealt with the kings, the princely states and everything. Since these princely states and kings are no longer in existence, this part was repealed. It was deleted by the 7th Amendment Act in 1956. It was deleted in 1956 by the 7th Amendment Act. So you no need to remember this part. All right, you no need to remember this part. Now part 8 deals with the union territories. Don't get confused with this union and its the union territories. Okay, this union and its territories means the union's territories, which means the states. Now the union territories means the union territories which we have: Andaman and Nicobar, okay, Pondicherry, and so on. So part 9 deals with the panchayats, part 9a with the municipalities, part 9b with the cooperative societies. All right. Part 10 deals with the schedule and the tribal areas. Part 11 deals with the relations between the union and the states. Part 12 with the finance, property, contracts and suits. Part 13 deals with the trade and commerce within the territory of India. Alright, Part 14 with the services under the union and the states. Okay, Part 14A deals with the tribunals. Part 15 deals with the elections. Part 16 deals with the special provisions relating to the certain classes. Part 17 deals with the languages. Okay, Part 18 deals with the emergency provisions. Okay, so it deals with the emergency provisions, which are there are three emergencies, right? I hope you all know this. National emergency, and we have state emergency. Also, we have the financial emergency. Okay, we will learn each and everything in a much detailed way in the upcoming sessions. Now I will just brief you which part is related to which one. And Part 19 deals with the miscellaneous. So all the provisions which couldn't be adjusted in any of the other parts, they are simply adjusted in miscellaneous under Part 19. So Part 20 deals with the amendment of the constitution. Okay, the amendment, if constitution, in the beginning of the session we discussed that constitution can be changed, can be modified only through amendments. How can it be changed and what is the process, that everything will be discussed, is illustrated in Part 20. Okay, now Part 21 deals with the temporary, transitional and special provisions. So Article 370, which dealt with the special provision of the Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir, comes under this part. Okay, and Part 22, it deals with the short title, date of commencement, authoritative text in Hindi and repeals. So Part 22 deals with the short title, date of commencement, authoritative text in Hindi. Okay, so if we count how many parts are there, this is the first part, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. So this is repealed, this is deleted, so no need to count. This is 8th, 9th, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24 and 25. So there are 25 parts as of now. All right. Now, how can you remember these parts? From Part 1 to 12, you can remember just by learning this, which is you can fly directly from US to UP to meet child of Sachin. See, some of these tricks may be funny to you, but trust me, don't waste your time to learn each and everything. I mean, to recollect each and everything. You have to be smart enough to quickly grasp, to quickly remember this as early as possible. So don't wait in mugging up each and everything. Just try to use some mnemonics, or if this is not convenient for you, you can use your own mnemonic, or you can frame something else, but learn as easy as possible. All right, now I will just explain you how to correlate this one. So you can fly directly from US to UP to meet child of Sachin. Here U refers to union and territories. Now this citizenship refers to this C, you can, right? So every some of the letters, some of the alphabet are in bold, right? So C refers to citizenship, and F, what is F? F refers to fundamental rights, and D for directive principles, and again F for the fundamental duties. All right, US and UP. Okay, U means union, S means states. Okay, this is repealed, so no need to remember that. Now UP, U refers to union territories, P refers to panchayats. All right. Here M, C and S. M, C and S refer to M for municipalities, C for cooperative societies and S for scheduled and tribal areas, right? Scheduled areas and tribal areas. So that is still part 1 to part 12. Now part 13 to part 19. How can you remember? How can you remember part 13 to part 19? By just remembering this. Read from the start to end, please. Here R, F, T, the first alphabet of each word, right? R, F, T, S, okay? See. R refers to relations between the union and territories and the states, right? F refers to the finance, property, contracts and suits, and T refers to trade and commerce. S refers to services, okay, and then TEP, all right. T refers to tribunals, E refers to elections, and P refers to the special provisions, okay. And the remaining parts, which is from part 17 to last part, you can remember it by Lee Mats, okay. Lee Mats. L refers to languages, E for emergency provisions, M refers to miscellaneous, A for the amendments of constitution, T for temporary and special provisions, and S for short title. Alright, so in this way you can remember all the parts, that is from part 1 to part 25. Okay. Now let us delve into the schedules of the Indian Constitution. If I talk about the first schedule deals with the name of states and union territories. Okay, the first schedule deals with the name of states and union territories. Now the second schedule explains about the provision related to salary, allowances, emoluments of the union and state legislature, executives and judiciary. So how much salary to be given for each and every person, how much salary for the prime minister, how much salary for the president, for the chief justice of India, for the attorney general. So each and everything will be is mentioned, right, in schedule 2. Now in schedule 3, all the votes and affirmations of various people are mentioned, and schedule 4 discusses about the allocation of seats of state and union territories in Rajya Sabha. Now I will just ask you a question, okay, I will just ask you a question, try to answer it. On what basis, right, on what basis the seats of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, the seats of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha of various states and union territories are allocated, okay? On what basis the seats of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha of states and union territories are allocated? What is the basis? See, to allocate various seats, right, in states and union territories, the area of the state is not considered, right? The area of the district or the area is not considered. It completely depends on the population, right? On the basis of population, the number of seats of the Rajya Sabha and the number of seats of the Lok Sabha are decided. Area is not considered, okay, just the population is considered, okay, just the population is considered. So this is the reason why the state, Uttar Pradesh state, has highest number of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha seats, because if you observe, the population of Uttar Pradesh is the highest among all the states of India. All right, so the seats of Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha are highest in Uttar Pradesh. Now schedule 5 talks about this related to the administration and control in scheduled area and scheduled tribe, and schedule 6 refers to the provisions related to administration and control of Assam, Tripura, Meghalaya and Mizoram. Now here you may ask me a doubt, sir, we have 8 northeastern states, but why only 4 are mentioned, right? Why only 4 are mentioned? See, this is due to the different topographical area, right? This is due to different topographical area advantage, the geographic advantage, okay, of these four states. And because of this, these four states are treated in a special way, and the administration and everything will be is controlled in a special way when compared to the other northeastern states. Okay, this is just for because of the geographical area and the strategic importance of these four northeastern states. All right, now the schedule 7 talks about the federal structure, the three list. Okay, the three list, which is the union list, right, which is the union list. This is the state list, okay, and this is the concurrent list. I think you must have heard about these three. So what is meant by union list? Union list is only the central government can make law under the categories, under the subjects that are under the union list. All right, for instance, we have defense. Okay, we have defense, we have railways, we have postal departments, right, and also we have foreign policies. All right, so what happens is only the union government, the union has the authority to make any changes in these. If we consider state list, right, only the state government has the authority to make changes in the subjects that come under this state list. If I give you an example of the list of subjects that come under state list, let us take an example of state police, right? State police, the if this the state government wants to make any changes in the state police, it can easily make, right, and the union government shouldn't interfere in that. All right, and if we talk about the panchayats, if we talk about the sanitation, right, if we talk about the public library or the drinking water, if the state government wants to make any change, it can make, because the authority lies in the state government. If we talk about the concurrent list, right, if we talk about the concurrent list is that list where both the center as well as the state, okay, both the center and the state can make law, right? For instance, if we take if we consider education, if we consider forestry, right, if we consider forestry, both union as well as the state can interfere in this. Okay, they both can make laws in this. All right, so union list originally initially it had 97 subjects under it, but now there are 100 subjects. All right, initially in the union list there were 97 subjects, and now it has 100 subjects, whereas in state list initially we had 56 subjects, but now we have 51 subjects. All right, 51 subjects. In concurrent list we had initially 47 subjects, and now we have 52 subjects. All right, now let us move to schedule 8. Schedule 8 talks about it illustrates about the official languages. Okay, so originally we had 14 official languages, okay, but now we have 22 official languages. Now schedule 9 talks about the acts and laws related to land reform. Schedule 10 talks about the anti-defection law. What is meant by that? What is meant by defection law? See, for instance, let me give you an example. Let us take an MP, right, member of parliament, right? So there is an MP who was elected in a particular constituency, and he belongs to, let's say, he belongs to Congress party. All right, he belongs to Congress party. Now he came to parliament and he resigned and he joined in BJP. Okay, initially he was in Congress, now he resigned and he joined in BJP. Now the anti-defection law comes into picture because his seat will be declared as valid even though he resigned as MP of Congress party, right, and he jumped into BJP, his seat will be declared as valid. Okay, even though he jumped into a new party, his seat will not be affected. Okay, so this is known as anti-defection law, and this is mentioned in Schedule 10. Okay, hope you understood. Now Schedule 11 deals with the Panchayat Raj, and Schedule 12 deals with the municipality and the municipal corporation. Now, how can you remember all the schedules? How can you remember all the schedules? Just remember this. Just remember this sentence, tears of old PM. Okay, tears of old PM. Here, if you observe, tears of old PM, which means, see, I have highlighted each and everything. So name of the, if you consider Schedule 1, it is name of states and union territories. So T. Okay. The second schedule deals with the provision of salary, allowances and emoluments. So this is E. Okay. Next one is alphabet A. So oaths and affirmations. This is A. And the fourth schedule is the seats and the seats of state and union territories in Rajya Sabha. So R. Okay. So this is S. Tiers of. This is of. So of Assam, of Tripura, Meghalaya and Mizoram. Alright. So of, you can remember O, and this is F, federal structure, which has 3 lists: the union, state and concurrent. So tiers of old. So O for official languages, L stands for land reforms, and D stands for defection law, that is old, and P stands for Panchayati Raj, and M stands for the municipality and municipal corporation. So you can remember the schedules by just remembering this sentence. Okay, so now we shall just look into the some miscellaneous information which will be very interesting. See, the official seal of the Constituent Assembly contained the image of the elephant. Okay, if we look here, this is the official seal of the Constituent Assembly, and you can see the picture of the elephant. All right. So this seal was made before the partition of Pakistan. That's why they included this part. All right. So the official seal contained the image of elephant because elephant is a huge animal, right? Elephant is a huge animal, and Indian Constitution is also huge. It is the bulkiest constitution. So the size of the elephant resembles the size of our constitution. All right. Now, the number of female members in the Constituent Assembly was 15. All right. The number of members of the Constituent Assembly was 15. And in the first session of Constituent Assembly, out of these 15 female members, only 9 female members participated in the first session of the Constituent Assembly, which was held in New Delhi. Okay, so who knows? So sometimes you may get some weird questions in your GK section. So it is always better to learn as many facts as possible. And now we shall just practice some questions. The first question, the first meeting of the Constituent Assembly had taken place on December 9, 1946, and it was presided by whom as its interim president? Interim president means temporary president. Okay, temporary president. Who was the temporary president for the first meeting of Constituent Assembly? He is Dr. Sachidanand Sinha. All right. I hope you got it right. Now, the second one is the national anthem was adopted by the Constituent Assembly on which of the following day? So the national anthem was adopted on which of the following day? Try to answer this. I hope you got it right. It is 24th January 1950. Okay, 24th January 1950. If we get into some more details, the national anthem of India, which is Janaganamana, composed originally in Bengali by Rabindranath Tagore, and it was adopted in its Hindi version by the Constituent Assembly as the national anthem of India on 24th January 1950. All right, and it was first sung on 27th December 1911 at the Kolkata session of the INC. All right, it was adopted on 24th January 1950, but previously it was first sung in Kolkata session, okay, in Kolkata session of Indian National Congress on 27th December 1911. All right. And the third one is the preamble of Indian Constitution is inspired by. We already discussed this. The preamble of the Indian Constitution is inspired by the objective resolution. Okay, the objective resolution was proposed by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. Okay, so the preamble of the Indian Constitution is inspired by the objective resolution, and on 13 December 1946, Nehru moved the objective resolution in the Constituent Assembly, and this resolution was anonymously adopted on 22nd January 1947, and it became the preamble of the Constitution. Okay, so the objective resolution, the preamble of the Constitution is related to objective resolution. Now, the next question: why was 26th January chosen as the date of commencement of Indian Constitution? Why was it chosen as the date of commencement of instead of choosing 26 November? Why did we choose 26th January as the date of commencement of Indian Constitution? Why? Because it is related to the Purna Swaraj. We already discussed about this. So the Constitution came into force on 26 Jan 1950, as it was specifically chosen as the date of commencement of the Constitution because on this day in 1930 the Purna Swaraj Day was celebrated, right? From 1930, from 26 January 1930, we have been celebrating the Purna Swaraj Day, right? And it was Purna Swaraj was passed in Lahore session in 1929 December, and the Constitution was adopted by the Constituent Assembly on 26 November 1949. Okay, so how many times Indian Constitution was amended before finalization? So how many times it was amended before finalizing it? It was amended 2000 times. Okay. Okay. Which country has the shortest written constitution? I hope this is in my comments now. The answer is in my comments. Okay, so which country has the shortest written constitution? It is the Constitution of Monaco, and Monaco is in Europe. Okay, Monaco is in Europe. How much time was taken to draft the entire Constitution of India? Yes, it's 2 years, 11 months and 18 days. Okay. Now, our Constitution was calligraphed in English language by, not in Hindi language, English language by Prem Bihari Raizada. And who calligraphed in Hindi language? His Vasant Krishna Vidh. Alright. And in which session of the Indian National Congress Purna Swaraj resolution was passed? We already discussed this. It was passed in the Lahore session. Alright. How many schedules are there in the Constitution of India as of now? Okay. as of now, how many schedules are there in the Constitution of India? There are 12 schedules. Okay. And which schedule of the Indian Constitution contains languages? Try to answer this. Which schedule emphasizes languages? Yes, the 8th schedule of the Constitution illustrates about the languages. So guys, I hope you like this session, and do tell us if you want more sessions like this. Okay, it can be polity, it can be history, geography, economics. Okay, it can be anything, or science. Okay, I will as many sessions as possible, and do let us know what type of sessions do you want, and what type of subject do you want. All right, and thank you for watching the entire video. I hope you understood, you came across various facts, some important exam relevant facts. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, do subscribe it, and do share it with your fellow aspirants. All right, so thank you very much, and all the very best. Prepare well. Thank you.